Okay, welcome back. During this lecture, we'll focus on for loops essentially, but we'll look at one form of while loop before we go to the for loop. So then in repetition statements, sometimes for loops and while loops can work together, as well as they can be used interchangeably as well, but they have slightly different usages in the programming scenarios. All right, now here's a quick overview of what we discussed so far in terms of the while loops. So we know two types of while loops now. So counter control while loops, where we know exactly how many times we need to repeat. So in that kind of a scenario, so we can keep a counter that keep track of a set of operations that will be performing and then how many times, right? Now if you don't know exactly how many times we need to perform a certain operation, but we know when to stop given a special value, so that kind of while loop is called the sentinel control while loop, right? Now in addition to having these counter control while loops and a sentinel control while loops, so we can have something called flag control or the Boolean value control while loops, right? So usually these kind of while loops are used in file operations and that kind of stuff. Okay, so we'll talk about file operations in another lecture. Now suppose I need to use a Boolean variable to control the while loop operation, so I'm going to call it done. So then bool done, we can initialize that to false to begin with. So in this one, so we are essentially reading a number from the keyboard. So if number is greater than 0, so we are adding that number to the sum. So otherwise we are going to exit from the loop. All right. So to do that, then so we have variables for sum and then the Boolean variable done set to false, and then we have the while loop written in the form while not done, go ahead and do it. So something like that, right? So since done is initialized to false, so then not done is true to begin with, right? So since while this condition is giving us true, so we go inside the loop. So then we are reading a number from the keyboard. So if number is greater than 0, so we add that number to the sum. So if number is not greater than 0, that is 0 or less than 0, so we make done to false, true, sorry, done to true. So then in that case, so not done, when we come back here, will be false. So since not done is false, so we can get out from the loop. All right. Now, so let's take one quick example and then see how this loop works. Okay. Suppose our input stream is something like this, right? So 2, 5, 8, and then -1. Okay. So if our input stream is like this, so then initially the value of done equals to false, and then sum equals to 0, and then we are reading the first number. So when we are reading the very first number, so then we have number equals to 2. So then done equals to false, so then not done is true, so we go inside the loop and then read the first number, so that's 2. Then number greater than 0, so that part is evaluated to true, and then we add that to the sum, so that's going to be 2, and then we don't come here, so we go back. So when you go back, still done value is false, so then not done is true, so we go ahead and read the second number, so then that's going to be 5. Okay, so then 5 greater than 0, so that's true, so we add that one to the sum, so that's going to be 7. Okay, so and then we come back again, so still done is false, so then we have read these two, so then 8 will be read to the number, and then it will be added to the sum because it's greater than 0, so then that's going to be 15. So then we come back, so still done is false, so we go ahead and read the next number. So the next number happens to be -1. Now number greater than 0 is false, so therefore we are going to the else part in this case. So then done becomes true. So since done is true, not done is going to be false, so therefore we will be getting out of the loop, right? So that's how this Boolean control loops are going to work, right? Now when you are reading data from a file system, usually we have a file stored in the hard disk. Now we have, let's say, statements inside the file like lines, and end of the file there's a special symbol called EOF, end of file marker. So this end of file marker is a boolean value that we can extract and then check whether we have done reading the file. So if I were to put a statement like this, so we can check while, let's say this file name is in file, so we are going to read data from it. Let's say while in file EOF, and we should read it while it is not reach EOF. So therefore while in file not EOF, go ahead and read data from the file, right? So then this is basically returning true as long as we are not inside this EOF marker. So if you are above the EOF marker, that means that we can read data from it. All right. So this is kind of a Boolean control loop that we can use in reading data from a file system as well. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at the second type of a loop in C++. Another commonly used one is called the for loop. So usually we can use for loops in place of counter controlled while loops, right? So syntax to the for loop is something like this. So we have the for keyword, and then the initial statement, and the loop condition check, and the update statement separated by semicolon, and then set of statements to be executed inside the for loop. So if you have only one statement, so we don't need to have the curly bracket, but if you have multiple statements, so we can have the curly bracket to group set of statements that belongs to the for loop. All right. Now I said that for loop is kind of a counter control while loop. So in this case, suppose I need to display numbers 1 through 9. So then 1, 2, 3 up to 9. Now if I want to go about doing this, we know that we can have a counter control while loop doing that. So let's say I'm going to define it as int I. So we can set to I as 1 to begin with, and then we can check while I less than 10, right? Because you need to display numbers 1 through 9. So if that is the case, so we can go ahead and display the number. So cout I, and then increment I by 1, right? So I plus plus. So this loop is essentially going to display numbers 1 through 9. Okay. Now in here then, so we have three parts of this statement. So this is the initial statement. So this is the loop condition check, and then this is the update statement, and then this is a part that we are repeating. Now in the for loop then, so what you do is we put the initial statement in the first part of the for loop. So we put the condition check as a second part of the for loop. We put the update statement as a third part of the loop, and then what we are repeating inside the for loop, right? So then, so this one is pretty much a pretty nice structure where we can put together initial statements, the condition check, and the update statement in one line inside the for loop, and then whatever the statements that needs to be repeated after that within curly brackets for the for loop. All right. So that's kind of the basic syntax of this for loop. So let's take a look at few for loops and then see how it works. Okay. Now suppose I need to then write a for loop that prints hello 5 times, right? Now if I want to do that, then I know exactly how many times I need to repeat this certain set of operations. Then here, so I will be displaying hello 5 times. All right. So now I need to wrap it around inside a loop. So since I want to do it inside a for loop, so then I can actually put it as a for loop. So in the for loop, we know that we have the initial statement that initialize the counter in this case. So I'm going to use the counter as I. So then I equals to 0, and then I need to go until 4 then. So I less than 5, I plus plus. So then we can go ahead and repeat this 5 times over and over again, right? So now when we execute this, so we start with this statements to begin with. So then initially value of I equals to 0, and then we come to the condition check. So in the condition check, we are checking whether I less than 5, so that's true. So then we go inside the loop. Now inside the loop we are displaying hello, so then the first output will be hello, and then after doing this operation we are going back to the update statement. Now in the update statement, so we are incrementing the counter by 1, so then I becomes 1, and then after the update statement, so we come to the condition check. And in the condition check we are checking whether I less than 5, so that is true in this case because I equals to 1. So since it is true, so we go inside the loop again, okay, and then display hello one more time, and then we come back and then perform the update statement. This time I will be 2. So likewise we are repeating this segment of the code over and over again until we reach this condition false, right? So that happens when I equals to 5. When I equals to 5, 5 less than 5 is false, so therefore we get out from the loop at that point, right? So that's kind of the logical operation of the for loop, right? So in a for loop then, so initial condition will be executed only once, and then the update statement, so set of statements to be repeated, and the condition check will be executed over and over again until the loop terminating condition satisfies the stopping condition for the loop. All right. So let's take a couple of more examples of for loops and then see what is happening inside these for loops. Now in here, so we have the initial value set to 10, and then we are checking whether that value I greater than or equals to 1, and then the update statement, this time actually we are deducting 1 from I. Okay. So during the process, so we are displaying that I. So then we know that this statement will be executed for the first time, and then we come to the condition check. If the condition check is true, so we go inside the loop, and after executing it, so we come to the update statement. So after update statement, so we are coming back to the condition check, right? So that's pretty much the loop, right? So then if you trace it, so initial value of I equals to 10. Now 10 less than 10 less greater than or equals to 1 is true, so then we go inside the loop, so we display that value, so then that's going to be 10, and then come back here and then deduct 1 from I, so then I is 9 in this case, right? Now 9 greater than or equals to 1, that is true, so then we go inside the loop, so display that I, so that's 9, and then come back and then deduct 1 from it, so 8. Since 8 greater than or equals to 1 is true, so we go inside the loop and then display it, and so on and so forth. All right, so we continue doing that. Okay, so then we perform this particular operation, so until value of I greater than or equals to 1. So then when value of I is 1, so still that condition is true, so then we go inside the loop and then display that one, and then deduct 1 from I, so then I becomes 0. Now 0 greater than or equals to 1 is false, so then at that point, so we get out from the loop, right? So therefore from this for loop, so we will be displaying numbers backwards 10 through 1. Okay. Now in this for loop, so we start I with 10, and then we are going to check whether I less than or equals to 9. If that is true, so we go ahead and display that I, and then come here and then increment I by 1, right? So once increment operation happens, so we go to the condition check and see if we can repeat it again. All right. Now in this case then, so initial value of I equals to 10, and then we come here and check the condition check. So then 10 less than or equals to 9. So since I is actually 10, so 10 less than or equals to 9 is false right away. So then we never get inside the loop, so we get out from it. So from the loop then, so we don't have anything that needs to be displayed, right? So this condition will become false right away when we evaluate the condition for the repetition for the very first time. Okay. All right. So so far then in the for loops that we have discussed, so we know exactly how many times we need to repeat. So we read that number as a condition. However, suppose we don't know exactly how many times we need to repeat, but we are going to determine that during the runtime. So if you want to determine that during the runtime, so we can pretty much ask the user how many times we need to repeat, right? So then we can read that one as a variable. Okay. and then we can put that variable in the loop condition check for the for loop, right? So the same thing can be done in fact for the while loop as well, right? Now in here then, so number of times that we want to repeat will be given by the user, right? So if user enter, let's say 10, so then this loop will be executed 10 times, then display numbers 0 through 9. If user enter, in this case then 0 through 9, right? So if you say 5, so then this loop will be repeated 5 times, so then numbers will be 0 through 4, okay? So something along that line, okay? So therefore how many times we will be repeating is determined by the user input. So that will make for loops very flexible, structures. So where the number of times that we need to repeat doesn't need to be a fixed value that we should know before we write the program, but that value can be a dynamic value that is taken from the keyboard or determined during the computation or something like that nature, okay? All right. So let's do one quick checkpointing question and then see if you understand the basic, constructs related to the for loop, okay? All right, so after answering that, so I think you all had a good idea about now how the for loops work. So let's take one more example and then see how we can use a for loop in a simple application scenario where we need to write a program that calculates the daily average sales for a certain product, right? So now in this scenario then, so we are going to ask the user to enter number of days and read sales for each day, and then we need to determine the daily average, all right? So therefore how many days does not need to be a fixed value, so it's determined by the user input, right? So in this scenario then, so we need to have several different constructs need to be placed in. So now the first thing is number of days, all right? So the number of days we don't know the number at that point, right? So therefore we need to read that from the keyboard, right? So then cin number of days, all right? So once you do that, the next thing we need to do is then, so we need to read daily sales. So in order for us to read daily sales, so we can have a double variable, let's say sales values, and then we need to calculate the average. So then you can declare another double variable for average, right? And now we can write a loop using this number of days variable to determine how many times we need to repeat, all right? So let's write a for loop for that. So we can start the counter, let's say I as a 0, and then I should be less than number of days, okay? And then we increment I by 1, okay? So that will run through this for loop for that many days, okay? So then inside the loop, so what we need to do is we need to read the sales value, right? So once you are done reading all of these sales values, so next thing we need to do is to determine the average. Now another condition here, number of days should be greater than 0, so we can pretty much check that using an if else statement in here, okay? Now inside this for loop then, so we are reading sales values for each day. After reading, so we can calculate the average. So then average equals sales divided by how many days we have the input for. For that also we can use this number of days variable to perform the calculation. So therefore having a variable like this nature help us to put that variable in various part of the program where we have that value to be used for certain calculations, all right? So that gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of writing for loops.